Hello everyone. Welcome to Reflecting on Truth, and I'm Jim Higgins. And tonight we're going to talk about how to bake an imperfect pie. Now my sister is an amazing baker. I mean, she makes candy, cookies, cakes. I just think about those, and she's just such an awesome baker when it comes to these, and I'm starting to think about dessert right now. But I'm reminded of an incident way back when we were younger, and my sister decided that she wanted to make a lemon pie. Now, clearly this sounds like a great idea to me because I like pie. I like pie a lot. And so my sister was going to make a pie, but one of the things you have to know about my sister is good enough is never good enough. She always wants to go just that much more to make it extra special. And so on this particular occasion, my sister had identified a secret ingredient that she wanted to use. And it was a bottle of this special stuff that my family had that she was going to add this to the pie. And so she did. And so she baked this lemon pie, and you know how things smell when they're in the oven and it's just wafting through the house. You can smell the sugar caramelizing and your mouth starts watering. You can already taste it. And so that's what was happening to us. We were looking forward to my sister's pie. And it came out of the oven. You had to let it cool just a little bit. And then she cut it and she served it. And we all sat in silence, just shoveling our pie away, enjoying it and commenting about just how delicious this pie was. And so my sister said, one of the reasons the pie is so good is because I put a secret ingredient in it. And so we stopped and, well, tell us, what is the secret ingredient? And so she proceeded to tell us what the secret ingredient was. And as soon as I heard what this secret ingredient was, I immediately started wondering if I was going to feel sick. Because that bottle that she had used had been empty. And so I had filled it with concentrated soap water. She didn't know that. And so she added this concentrated soap into her lemon pie. And the amazing thing was, it was passable. But I don't think that you would go to a store and be willing to buy a pie if you knew that the pie contained soap. And so this is an important concept that we need to keep in mind as Christians, because the Christian walk it's a life-changing event. If you meet Jesus and you accept him as your Savior and you are reunited with the family of God, everything changes. But there are some challenges that are focused with that, is because each of us has our own biases, our own taints, that if we're not careful, we can let our own preconceptions infect what are often the clearest statements of the Bible. And in the book of Galatians, chapter 5, this is the Apostle Paul writing, chapter 5 of his epistle to the Galatians, in verse 9, he warns the Galatians because they have allowed a little bit of error to slip into their relationship with God. It was the type of error that was leading them to look away from God's goodness and instead to look at the things that they themselves are doing as if they are somehow contributing to God's willingness to accept them. They've started focusing on works. And Paul gives them this warning. Remember, a little yeast will leaven the entire loaf. A little yeast will leaven the entire loaf. The point of that is sometimes the slightest little ingredient can contaminate the entire thing. And often, just like with my sister's pie, you may not even fully recognize it. You have to be on your guard. And so in the book of Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 16, verse 6, Jesus gives his disciples a warning where he tells them that they need to be on their guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Now, the disciples, when they heard this, the disciples thought, why is he talking about bread? And they were confused. And Jesus kind of clarified what he was meaning with them. And then we learn a few verses later that they understood that Jesus was saying, beware of the teachings of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Beware of the teachings. Now you put those together, be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees, and that yeast is the teachings of the Pharisees and Sadducees. And Paul makes the point that a little yeast, sometimes just the littlest contamination, can sweep through and contaminate the entire thing. And so when you think about what was that yeast Jesus was talking about with respect to the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the problem that they had was not a lack of knowledge of truth. I mean, these people many of them had memorized large sections of the Bible. It wasn't a lack of knowledge that they had. It was a lack of conversion. They had somehow confused this idea that if they knew enough and they did enough, somehow God would owe them his favor. So their religion was this outward, lifeless religion that was based on their efforts. And Jesus was saying, beware of this. Because the Pharisees and the Sadducees had no love, no power, no humility, and they had no victory. And so these very people who claimed that they were the oracles of God, that they were God's chosen people, they're the very ones who chose to murder the one sent to save them. Now, you have to step back and say, how could they possibly give themselves a pass on that? The reason is a little leaven leavens the whole lump. If you're not careful, if you let this subtle hardness of heart, this judgmental nature, this I am holy idea seep into yourself, it removes the humility, it removes the dependence, it removes the love that you have for God and your fellow men. Remember what Jesus said. Jesus said, the one who has been forgiven much, what? Loves much. If you recognize you have been forgiven much and deserve nothing, you will love much. And so we as Christians, we're called to more. We are called to be perfect. What does it say? We're told, Jesus tells us, be ye perfect even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Now, what's he talking about? He's talking about God's character being reflected in us. And what is the character of God? Jesus told us, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And when you look squarely at Jesus, what you see is an attitude of service, servanthood, love, self-sacrifice, patience, kindness, mercy, goodness. These are the fruits of the Spirit, right? So we're called to be perfect, to show forth the fruits of the Spirit. Now, how do we do that? And I'm going to conclude with this. There's only one way that we can accomplish the kind of perfection that God is calling us to. And the answer to the question is how we do it is found in the book of Colossians, chapter 1, verse 27. And it's simply stated as this: Christ in you, the hope of glory. It's the only way. Jesus said, I am the vine, you're the branches. Abide in me, and you will bear much fruit. So thank you for joining me for this brief presentation. I hope it gives you something to think about as you go through your day. And I hope you'll join me again. This is Reflecting on Truth, and I'm Jim Higgins. Have a great day.